So, one of our biggest downsides is men's need for dopamine. Now, I've been watching this court thing with Chief Steins. Can't remember what state he was from, Kentucky or something, I think. No, Tennessee. That's what it was, Tennessee. And one thing I noticed was that after this guy shot the judge, they were talking about the judge that was shot was getting favors, possibly, by women that wanted to avoid jail time. Now, when we get a lot of these people in power, obviously they don't start like that. It's experience that gets them there. If I go to a bar, I might think, well, I could get a BJ in the stall. And I'm gonna look around. I'm gonna say, it's hypothetical. No real scenario, just using it as an analogy. But I'm gonna look around and I'm gonna think, well, which one would be more likely to do that? And then I'm going to think, well, it's never happened before. It probably never will. And I'm going to disregard it, right? Men, they tend to fantasize a bit. But without the lack of it happening, the brain feels like it's not going to happen. So now imagine being a judge and you're doing that for, let's say, 5 years. And you stick to the guidelines. You give all these people what you believe is fair treatment, what everybody is saying is fair treatment. This person deserves this. They're a refill. Their gravity score is high. Well, I guess those kind of go together, don't they? Because if you're a refill, then your gravity score is high. But you know what I'm saying. And so we look at it as not we're that person. What would we do if we were in that situation? No, you don't want to think that, because that'd be negative, right? Well, why am I going to see myself, a judge, as the defendant? Why would you want to make that connection, right? Because then you're going to start thinking about the fairness of that person, morality, blah, blah, blah. Stick to the guidelines, stick to the system, right? Now, let's say you have one that comes in for, meth charges and never cared about her reputation, and says to the judge, I'll do this if you cannot put me in jail. And the dopamine in the man is going to say, whoa, this is a new possible experience. This is exciting. And they might be cautious at first because, they've been doing it for 5 years, sticking to the guidelines. So this is kind of unorthodox for them, but they've probably fantasized about it, I'm sure. And so this experience opens up the door for more possible dopamine in the future. Now, every woman that comes in, that judge is going to look at them like, could that happen again? Should I approach them? Should I wait for them to approach me? Because there's a lot on the line. So you don't want to get caught up in something you're not even going to get anything out of, especially. So that is our analytical ability to, perceive the situations in ways that you might get what you want because it's already happened once before. So now your mind has crossed that barrier where it's gone from fantasy to, hey, it's already happened once. And in a guy's mind, it's like we tend to categorize people. We'll see bigger women, and we just associate them with other bigger women. Like when you're in Walmart and you see those memes and that with bigger people, and it's like you think of all the people that you have seen in Walmart that were that big, right? You look at hippies, if they're dressed as hippies, you're going to think they're a hippie. You're going to assume they're a hippie because we associate it with other people that were hippies. So then you look at drug addicts, and it's like, well, if they have, spots on their face where they're scratching, you assume that they're meth heads. Why? Because you've seen other meth heads. So you assume that that's what's causing it. And now that experience, that spot in your library tends to associate that. Now, if you're the judge, you're going to be looking at all these women thinking, I have a more likely chance with her. And now they may go through with it. Now, the problem is they have leverage. Just like the one I heard about, and I think it was Muncie, that the girl was doing a favor for the CEO, and then she spit it into her pocket. Got him later on. So leverage is always, it's something a guy normally takes in as a potential, the variable, but dopamine kind of tends to override that, especially with more experience. That's why guys tend to look at women the way they do, because they're not looking at it as these are people, because there's people everywhere. You can get to know anybody. So why would you want to know this exact person if you can just get something from them real quick? So they decide that because from experience, or experience that they've heard from somebody else, so they lack the experience to be able to do it, lack the confidence, and they break up in the middle of it, screw the whole thing up. But the guys that have this experience of finding those women, well, they tend to categorize every woman into that. And if this woman doesn't even look at them passing by, this guy will get in his head thinking, she should have looked at me. Why did she completely blow me off? And this can be similar to, like, kind of like psychosis, not in the way that it's making them paranoid, but the way that they're seeing everything for first person view, as if they deserve to be noticed. But when we think that we deserve to be noticed, causes opposition in people, because then we give off these subtle signs of, like, well, this person's feeling entitled, that they should get my attention. And that makes a lot of people back off. It's just on a biological level, the hierarchy of psychology, where we kind of fit into our slot based on our experience. So the same way that guys say, or women say all guys are dogs, they're just doing the same to women, but not in the way that they're repulsed by their behavior, but rather in the way that they're trying to categorize into a simple folder, where can I get my dopamine? It's like you watch that movie Still Waiting, and in the video that the guy's watching in the movie, the guy's saying, well, one one tat one tattoo cross on a woman is a no-go. Now, if she has 3 or more crosses on her, then that means she actually hates God, and she's going to be easy. That is a weird psychological phenomenon, isn't it? Why would a woman that hates God put more crosses on her? Well, see, that's the thing about opposition, is that, why do goths dress up the way they do? So they can stick out, right? Because they want their meaning to stand out. But it's not always that they want to be visible. It's that they want to produce the feeling that they feel inside onto others. I feel negative about life, so I'm going to show it with my wardrobe, and it's subtly going to make you feel like this person really stands out, because of how their dark energy kind of flows off them. That's why facial expressions can be a major factor in how we treat each other, because we're taking those subtle signs as cues for our position in the hierarchy of psychology.